I don't know my father, right? So, I didn't grow up with a man in the house. I didn't grow up with a father figure.
You don't know your dad?
No.
To this day?
To this day.
Wow.
To this day. And
how do you process that, being a father of two young boys?
Sure, you just do the best you can. You talk to enough parents, there's no blueprint for it.
Right.
And part of how I approach life is family, friends, and experiences. Mm-hmm. And so I want to surround my kids with family, make sure they have friends, and give them as many experiences as possible. And so that's how I process it. Be there.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be
the journey. The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
the journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is
the journey. The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.
The Journey Memphis is being generously supported by Nike's Black Community Commitment and Methodist Labanner Healthcare. Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we got a Memphis icon that I know you're gonna love. But first, we're gonna start with our quote. Today's quote comes from the great gold medalist, Olympian, Carl Lewis. He's now a coach at University of Houston. But Carl said this: if you don't have confidence, you'll always find a way not to win. This brother that we have today, Williams Brack, is the epitome of confidence. Greenwood, Mississippi, straight out the SIP. Entrepreneur, business executive, graduate of Carver High School and Morehouse College, so he is a Morehouse man. Great son, great father, and truly a gentleman that I want to make sure you get a chance to meet. With no further ado, we have Brother Williams Brack.
Hey.
What's up, brother?
What's going on? Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Absolutely glad you're here.
Yeah.
So first, we're going to start back. We're going to take it back.
Okay.
The SIP. Tell me about them early days in the SIP.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Greenwood, Mississippi.
Okay.
LaFleur County, one of the smaller towns down in the Mississippi Delta.
Okay.
And worldwide, it's known as one of the most poverty-stricken places in the world.
Really?
Sure. Cotton capital, all these different things. And
Right.
I didn't feel it growing up.
I hear you.
You know, when you're a youth, you have fun with your friends, you go play sports in the ballpark, and you have a lot of friends and family around.
Right.
And so you're just enjoying life.
Okay.
And so I didn't realize the state of where I grew up because I was having so much fun with friends and family in the city. So
you really didn't know that you were poor?
Sure, to a certain extent I didn't.
Okay.
The older I got in elementary, the more obvious it started to become.
So how did you get to Memphis? Where was that transition from Mississippi to Memphis?
Sure, I'll give you the abbreviated version.
Okay.
And so my mother decided she wanted to move to Chicago, Illinois.
Okay.
And I had the option. Do I stay in Greenwood, Mississippi with my grandmother, or do I go to Chicago with her? And in my sixth grade mind at the time, I knew what Greenwood offered.
Right.
I didn't know what Chicago was, and so, hey, I want to go to the unknown. I want to see a new place, and I want to figure out what's happening in this Chicago place that I'd never been.
Right, right.
Well, while living in Chicago, when I finished middle school, 8th grade graduation, my great-grandmother had died. She had 21 children.
Okay.
And
wait, rewind. You said what now?
She had 21 children.
Your grandmother had 21 children?
She had 21 children. By the time she died, she had 123 grandchildren.
Wow.
And so the entire family descended upon Chicago at the time.
Right.
And when I was in Greenwood, one of my aunts moved to Texas.
Okay.
Another moved to Memphis, and my grandmother relocated to Memphis with her.
Right.
So I asked both my aunts at the time, I said, hey, I'd like to come spend the summer with you. Didn't hear from my aunt from Texas, did not hear from my aunt from Memphis either.
Okay.
School was just about to start in Chicago. My aunt from Memphis called and said, hey, would you like to come to Memphis? Had never been here before.
Right.
But a similar decision matrix like when I moved to Chicago. Didn't know what Memphis was. I knew about Chicago. I want to go explore Memphis.
Right.
And that's how I ended up at Memphis. And My grandmother lived on 3rd and Parkway,
Okay.
and so that led me to Carver High School here in Memphis.
Outside of people that were inside of your household, who had the biggest impact on young Brack?
Oh, sure. It's a really good question. And the answer is more so of a collective.
Okay.
Teachers always took a particular interest in me.
Okay.
They would feed me with confidence, like, hey, we know the kind of household and family and background you come from, but we also know you're going to be successful.
Okay.
And so.
And that came from your teachers?
Came from teachers, from elementary, middle, and high school. I was always put in position by teachers to be successful.
Okay.
And so just the entire collective, no matter the grade, they all poured into me a lot.
Okay.
A lot. And so teachers have been extremely influential.
As a young man, we always have dreams of who we could be as an adult.
Sure.
Who did you dream you were going to be, Brack?
Who? I mean,
what? What did you dream you were going to be?
There wasn't a what. I thought for sure I'd be a millionaire by 30.
Okay.
And that's still, at 34 today, that still kind of keeps me up at night, because I'm not yet.
Okay.
But I'm still continuing the journey. I thought I'd be a millionaire.
Right.
With multiple houses in multiple states and multiple countries
Okay,
around
now
the
wait a
world.
minute. Hold up. How did you get that thought when you were brought up in when you had such an impoverished background?
Sure. You know, I think there's a certain level of insanity that kind of creeped in.
Okay.
Because I had to reject my reality.
Okay.
All right. One thing I knew is that I didn't want that.
Right.
And so I didn't have the wherewithal to say, hey, here's the vision, here's the example I want to approach. So what I decided is that I just wanted the opposite of everything that I see.
Right.
You know, hyper-local in Greenwood, the dreams became international. Section 8 houses came multiple houses. Extreme poverty turned itself into dreams of generational and high wealth.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So essentially, it's just the opposite of everything that I saw.
Okay.
And I started to build a dream from that.
When did you know you was going to be okay? When did you know in your heart that you could do this thing called life?
Oh man, it's a good question. And this interesting thing happened from knowing to being kind of depressed a little bit. Right? Because I was 24. I was a financial planner working at Northwestern Mutual at the time.
Okay.
You know, I had my own place, I had cars, I had travel, I'm eating good, I'm making friends in life, and I was like, man, I've made it.
Right.
I've made 60 grand that year.
Right.
And that was more than my mother, both my aunts who already had been college educated by the time. So
Right.
I'd arrived, all intents and purposes, of being the opposite of how I grew up. But the scary thing, the very next thought was, damn, how do you get to the next level? Right? Because up until that point, at about age 24, I was running away from the poverty. Now I needed something to run to, right? And, you know, at 34, I'm still trying to figure that out. You know, I'm progressing in life and moving forward, and I'm doing well by a lot of people's standards, just not by mine.
As a young person, when was the first time in your life that you can remember that you had a friend from another race?
A friend? No. So, you know, for me, I attended the...
Or acquaintance, just someone
Sure.
that you would consider someone you're cool with.
So I was in high school.
Okay.
I was part of this Rotary program that's now called Reach Memphis. And what they would do was take inner city kids and send them to prep school in the Northeast. So Choate Rosemary Hall, Philip Exeter, et cetera.
Right.
And I attended one of these elite prep schools for the summer. And there were maybe a handful of black kids there.
Right.
But everyone else was from all over the world.
Right.
And my roommate was this Turkish guy.
Okay.
You know, his English was moderate to bad.
Right.
And he wanted me to teach him how to curse. So he didn't know a lot of English, but he knew a lot of 50 Cent songs.
I hear you. Well, real quickly, as we close out this segment, when was the first time you realized that you were a black man, or a black person?
Sure. I think most
Hold on for a quick second. Listen, we're going to be right back on the journey where Brother Brack is going to share with us when he realized he was a brother. Listen, we'll be right back. Stay right there. This is The Journey on the Kazuki Network.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
Success in life is not a straight line. There are twists and turns in everyone's life, and the more you know about their story, the more you'll understand the process. Kazuki Media Group proudly presents The Journey, a show that features successful black men in Memphis telling their stories of their lives and the ups and downs they've encountered on their ultimate road to success. We believe The Journey will encourage young men and help them see that life is a journey. Watch The Journey, hosted by me, Larry Robinson. Brought to you by the Kazuki Media Group in partnership with the Delta Boulay. Welcome back to The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today our Memphis icon is a brother by the name of Williams Brack. Now I gotta ask, how does a brother get a last name first? So Williams with an S, Brack. Where does that name come from?
Man, you have to ask my mother. So my father's name is William, right? And so I asked her, I said, well, where you get Williams from? She said, I don't know, I just made it up. She flipped her hand at me and walked off. That was her answer. And
whoa.
I wish it was more poetic than that.
We could have a better origin story than that, brother. Okay.
I wish it was more poetic.
All right, so before we left the break,
Sure.
we asked, when did you realize you were black?
Sure. I think there's multiple points.
Okay.
I mentioned that Memphis Reach program,
Right.
the Reach Memphis program,
Right.
and been around all these nationalities. So it wasn't just black and white. It was black, it was Turkish, it was Italian, it was El Salvadorian, it was white from Connecticut, Hispanics from Connecticut, and all these different things. And you find that black people just do things differently.
Right.
I grew up playing basketball and maybe some baseball, football. Well, these kids are playing soccer.
Right.
And guess who's the goalie? 'Cause that's what the black kid does.
Wow.
And then I think I went on a college visit to Cornell University.
Okay.
That's where I was supposed to go to high school. And I went to two different parties.
Okay.
Right. I went to the white party. They stood around, they drank champagne, they talked. I was like, man, this is not what I'm used to, because I was partying in high school.
Right.
And then I went to the black party.
Okay.
Where the music was great, everybody was dancing, it was a fever pitch.
Right.
And then you see the stark, difference in races from even how we gather to have a good time.
Right.
And it was just so obvious
Right.
at the time. And it was interesting. I became really self-aware about the race thing.
Okay. So let's go back to your youth, Greenwood. Tell me, some memories. Were those fond memories? Was those tough memories? What, as a kid, how did you process those memories? Or how do you process it now as an adult?
Sure. I mean, for me, it's mostly tough.
Okay.
I come from generations of poverty.
Okay.
I told you my great-grandmother had 21 children.
Right.
And growing up in Mississippi, it was to help as a sharecropper. And so my family didn't move too much further.
Okay, so unpack that a little bit for those that might be a little slower hearing. What did 21 children because of what?
Sharecropping. You grow up in the agricultural world of Greenwood, Mississippi. It's the cotton capital.
Right.
So the more kids you have, the more helpful you are in making money, being able to feed your hand. You have more hands to help.
Wow.
And so that happened. And, not only were there generations of poverty, what comes with generations of poverty is, my grandmother, who I don't know my father, right? So, I didn't grow up with a man in the house. I didn't grow up with a father figure.
You don't know your dad?
No.
To this day?
To this day.
Wow.
To this day. And
how do you process that, being a father of two young boys?
Sure, you should do the best you can. You talk to enough parents, there's no blueprint for it.
Right.
And part of how I approach life is family, friends, and experiences. And so I want to surround my kids with family, make sure they have friends, and give them as many experiences as possible. And so that's how I process it, be there.
Okay.
But growing up without a father, I was raised in a household that was uneducated. My grandmother never finished high school. My mother never finished high school. And so you have this ugly three-headed horseman of poverty, no father, and lack of education.
Right.
And so when I look back on it, there's times where there was not enough to eat. There's times when water was cut off and we were borrowing. I don't know if you've ever had to borrow water from a neighbor to cook and flush the toilet, but it's humbling.
Right.
To go up to a store and ask for food when they're closing, what's left over.
Right.
And so, I look back at it that the younger I was, I had a lot of time playing with friends and sports and all these different things, but holistically, the poverty and lack of. I washed clothes in the tub, hung them out on the fence outside. Right. This is how I grew up.
Wow. So how was the tradition to, you went to college though?
Sure.
So out of all of that, all of those experiences, you decided to go to college. How did you make that transition? And what was the fuel that pushed that transition?
I slept on couches most of my life, even in high school. I was starting quarterback on the football team from 9th grade. I ended up being the salutatorian in high school as well, so there was no question I was going to college.
Okay.
I told you about the teachers who were instrumental in my life outside of family, and they said, hey, this is the natural next path.
Right.
They did come with one warning, and they said, do not have a kid too soon. And when I tell you I made all the mistakes, I had a kid in high school.
Wow.
Which impacted my decisions on where I decided to go to college. And so I wasn't immune from the mistakes that were happening from people who grew up without a father and poverty and lack of education. But somehow, I was fortunate enough to still get to the next level of life, even with all the mistakes and even with the background.
There's a young man that's listening to you right now that may have just been told that his girlfriend's pregnant.
Sure.
What would you say to that young man right now?
I think the first is, practice some personal accountability. And the most important thing in the long term is being able to provide for that child and hopefully for your partner.
Right.
And so sometimes it may be some short-term pain where you have to go educate yourself. You have to go get some skill. And fortunately, I was allowed by my son's mother or his grandmother to say, hey, go off to college, get educated so that you can provide in the long term. And so there was some short-term sacrifice in the relationship, but over the long term, I now have custody of my son that I have in high school.
So you're a single dad?
I'm a single dad, single father.
Taking care of your kid?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. How much of that has been impacted by not having your dad?
I just felt the need to kind of step up.
Okay.
I was with his mother for a couple of years while I was in high school.
Right.
It was something unplanned, but it happened. Right. We had a relationship, and I've always been there in his life. And so there was no choice, honestly.
What was the day like? The very first day that you knew you were going to have him for the rest of your life, his life, or the rest of your life. But what was it like that very first day when you was like, you living with me now?
Oh, sure. Kind of like the scene in Boys in the Hood, right?
Okay.
He was experiencing some trouble in middle school.
Okay.
It's a weird age from a maturity standpoint, right? You start going through puberty.
Right.
You start noticing girls and all these different things. And so he went from an A student to like a CD student.
Right.
And, I just decided, and his mother was on board with it. I said, hey, we're in a very troubled time right now.
Right.
And we need to make sure that he has the influence necessary to kind of ride it out.
Right.
And he has. 7th grade was terrible. 8th grade got a little bit better.
Right.
9th grade was so-so. It was a pandemic year. In 10th grade, he's just improved tremendously. And I'm very, very proud and excited about the progress that he's made.
Fantastic.
Since we've been together. Yeah.
Shout out to Williams Brack, former intern at Kazuki.
Well, thanks to you. Yeah, thanks for hiring him. Absolutely.
Great successes. If you look back over the years, what would you say is your greatest success?
Being here in Memphis, I was able to be awarded the Memphis Business Journal 40 Under 40.
Really now?
Absolutely.
All right.
And it was not because of anything anything in particular that I was doing on the business side. And I was doing a tremendous amount of community work and giving back.
Right.
Because that's important. You
Right.
know, I understand and appreciate my upbringing so much so that I try my best and do the work to impact the youth in the community that I kind of grew up in. And the Memphis Business Journal kind of recognized that work, and it was a huge accomplishment.
Right. We talk about life and the quest for success not being a linear pursuit, not being a linear path.
Oh, man.
Give me some of the jobs you've had. Let's talk about that job you held in high school.
So, Memphis was one of the first charter schools here in Memphis, and I was able to work there for a while.
Okay.
Which is funny because, you know, the more people I kind of meet in and around Memphis, the more I realize Memphis hired a lot of kids and put a lot of money in our pockets.
Right.
You know, $200 a week. When you're in high school,
that's a lot of money.
That's a tremendous amount of money at the time.
Right.
From there, I worked at Burger King. I'm really ashamed to say how many jobs I've had at this point. From there, I worked at Burger King in Memphis. I've worked at the Sleep Inn Hotel. I moved to Memphis and I sold cell phones in AT&T as early as in 2015.
Okay.
I worked for a company called MSC Industrial Supply. After that, selling supplies to companies that made and moved something. Then I transitioned into banking, working for First Tennessee Bank, then First Horizon as a commercial lender, doing asset-based lending.
Wow.
Then I left First Tennessee and I went to Regions and I was doing cash flow lending.
Right.
A relationship manager is kind of the official job title.
Right.
And then from relationship manager and lender, I got the vice president and community development role.
Wow. You've had quite a journey.
That's a nice pun. I see what you did there.
So we do this thing where we got a couple words, and I want to get your response from those words. One of them being commitment. What does the word commitment mean to you?
You know, it means to follow through and get things done despite how you feel.
Okay. All right. Faith.
Oh, man, you got to believe in something greater than yourself.
Okay.
Despite what's in front of you, right? Despite contrary evidence to the contrary.
Okay. All right. Now, you are a person that spends a lot of time in the political realm.
Sure.
You work with a lot of candidates. Why is politics important to you as a professional?
Oh, man, that's actually a really good question. And the short answer is that politics affects everything.
Right.
You know, in 2016, 17, 18, I was doing a lot of community work. And that community work and grassroots work meant a lot of individual door knocking and trying to change lives of one door and one person at a time. Well, I sat back to kind of evaluate my work over that 2-3 year period and realized that, you know, sure, I can change one life, but there are political decisions that are made that can change whole neighborhoods with the stroke of a pen.
Right.
And so I decided to navigate up into the political realm and find people and dedicate some service, some time, and educate myself on the process, so that we can make a wider spread impact, a little bit faster than door to door, one life at a time.
Any aspirations of being in the political game yourself, being an elected official?
Being an elected official, no, but you know, putting myself at service, right? I love knocking on doors and you know, canvassing, things of that nature, raising money for candidates, and being an overall help to candidates. You know, public office isn't for everybody, but every person that's an elected official, they all need help. And I don't mind being the servant leader versus the person in front of the cameras.
Throughout your life to now, is there any regrets, anything you'd like a do-over on, a mulligan, so to speak?
Well, you know, I think for me, discipline over my penis.
Say that again?
Penis discipline.
Penis discipline.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You know, I hate to say it, but, you know, I think that promiscuous lifestyle, as many women as possible, thing is overrated.
Okay.
I think the real value is finding, you know, one partner that you can kind of share a lot of different things with. And so just choose wiser, keep it in my pants, so to speak.
Right.
And that's probably one thing I would most certainly do differently.
All right. You're talking to young Brack. And now I know you just told him about the penis problem. But if you could sit across the table from that kid in Greenwood, Mississippi, what would you say to him?
Oh, from that kid in Greenwood, Mississippi.
Yeah.
I think you're on the right path.
Okay.
You know, you've made some good choices about rejecting the current reality. You know, this personal accountability has to start at some point.
Right.
At some age, you have to stop blaming your parents or how you grew up or your environment on your current lot in life.
Right.
And you have to take accountability for it and make different choices.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, listen, there's a lot of young men,
Sure.
young boys, sitting here watching you right now. I would like you to look in that camera and leave them with a Brackism. Leave them with something when people ask them, have you ever met this guy named Williams Brack? That they will immediately recall seeing this with you.
Well, since we're doing puns, I'll leave them with this one. Is that you have to put something in a GPS. And there's no such thing as a final destination. Life is a journey. And so just because you put a goal in the GPS and you hit something, put another goal in, and another goal, and another goal. You know, it's a journey and there are no final destinations in life, but always have an idea about where you're going.
Listen, from confidence personified, I would say that. I've known this young man for a while, and I can tell you to expect even greater things. Listen, I'm Larry Robinson. For our guest today, Brother Williams Brack, Williams with an S on it, Brack. This has been The Journey. Thank you for joining us. Till the next time, take care.
Thank you to our partners at Nike's Black Community Commitment and Methodist Labanner Healthcare. To hear more incredible stories like this, be sure to download the Kazukian app from the App Store or Google Play, or check out the Journey Memphis podcast on all your major podcast providers. Also, check us out on the Kazukian Network.